Hmm.
Good evening. Welcome to another episode of Buzzwords and Music. Tonight I'm really super excited to have as a guest Ivan Van Hetten. He's a composer, a trumpeter, a keyboardist, musical director, educator. I mean, I could go on and on for for a half hour just listing your credits. Welcome to the show, Ivan.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. Ivan and I are label mates, so it's good to meet, even though we've never met.
That's true. That's true. We're in the same label, right?
Yep, but we do share, we share a similar love for music, and um, let's talk about your new album that just came out. Let's start there.
Excellent.
Um, it hasn't been out that long now, has it? When did that?
No, no. It's only been uh, 2 weeks or 3 weeks. I think it
Oh,
was February 8th or 4th or 8th. So it's
okay,
a few weeks. Yeah, a few
yeah.
weeks in.
So tell us a little bit about it. Caribbean
Well,
Tales.
Paraby Tales is the name,
Mm-hmm.
and it's I'm although I have a life as a producer and do a lot of, as many musicians do, overdub work and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to live music, I'm a band guy, you know,
And
and
what a
so
band you have on this record.
thank you.
Uh, it
And so I put a band together to record this, and this album has pretty much well, actually every song on the album, not only I've written, but we've recorded it in either 1, 2, or 3 takes. So we just went for, let's just do a bunch of takes, 2 takes, 3 takes max or so, and then choose the best one and leave it. um there is, it may sound a bit old school or whatever, but there's a certain magic that
absolutely.
way of working has, and then little mistakes, or little, if you even want to call them mistakes, are like, well, who cares,
Yeah, it's
um,
warts and all, warts and
yeah,
all.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I agree with you on the, you know, if you start doing a song over and over and over, it loses all the spontaneity, and
True,
you
true.
start thinking about it too much. And
Hmm.
there's something about being on that edge. It's like sitting in a chair where you lean back and the chair
Yeah,
is getting ready to fall,
that's true.
but
Yeah,
you
that's
don't.
true. That's
Um,
true. That's true. And what we did, I must say, I got the band together, and we rehearsed music, but we didn't take that long to rehearse it. We just went through it. I explained what I would want to do,
mhm.
and then we went into the studio for a couple of days, and then just did takes and choose the best takes, and little to no overdubs, basically.
Right.
Um, Took the whole record back with me, and I've mixed it in my own recording studio. It was recorded by Rich Green, by the way. He engineered it,
Okay.
who is known as the fifth Yellow Jacket. He's the guy who recorded pretty much everything from the Yellow Jackets, almost everything. I think anything from the mid or late '80s or so. I think he was involved from that
Wow.
point onwards.
Well, you
Um,
pretty much have Yellow Jackets on the record. I mean, just so the audience knows, you've got Will Kennedy on drums, Russell
I do.
Ferranti on piano, Jimmy
Yeah.
Haslip on bass, Melvin Lee
Yeah.
Davis on bass, Lenny Castro, Andy
Yeah.
Norell, Bob Mincer, and then of
Yeah.
course yourself. And it's just
Right.
like it's a who's list of music,
Yep.
and but when I listen to the record, it still comes. It even though you're looking at kind of almost like Yellow Jackets plus you,
Mm.
but it doesn't sound like that. It sounds like
Nope.
you.
Yeah.
It's all your voice, and
Mm.
that's a credit to
Thank
the
you.
people that you work with as well. That
Absolutely.
they can see your
Yeah.
vision and
Yeah.
override their own.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's interesting that you say that, because they are masters at adapting whatever they need to adapt to,
Yes.
but always, 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 and with no fail, they always play in service of the music. So they give exactly what the music needs. They
Yes.
are the type of people, and I try to be like that as well. I tend to go for playing what the music needs, and bringing to the table what the music needs, and that's why you don't, obviously you hear that it's Will Kennedy, you hear that it's Russell, but they're playing in service of the music,
Yes. And
and that's a skill.
it
That's
really is. It's when I tell people that, um, or even when I'm teaching, which I know you do as well. So we'll get into that in a little bit. But I always tell them, like, the music will tell you what it wants. Do not
exactly.
try and insert yourself into it.
Nope.
Um,
Nope.
you know, just let the music direct you. Same thing when you're mixing. Um, people will go into all these details, but it's like
Hmm. Hmm.
I like the old Quincy Jones thing where before he would do a mix, he would just throw all the faders up to unity
Yeah. Yeah.
and listen, make sure there
And
was, and then
listen, listen.
then the music
It's
tells you everything else it needs to do.
I think it's one of the I think it's one of the most important skills you can and maybe should have as a professional musician, especially if you're composing and if you're into bigger things than just um, that skill of
Yes.
listening to what's going on. And if you listen carefully, it's interesting that if you learn to listen as a musician
Hmm.
on stage, on the bandstand, off the bandstand, in the studio, if you learn to listen and you develop that skill, you'll get to an interesting point where the music just tells you what to play and
Yeah.
when not to play.
Right. That's almost the most important part is
Exactly.
what you don't play.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah. Because
there,
I silence this music as well, right?
I was getting ready to say there's music in the
Silence is
silence.
music.
So, yeah.
Yeah, man.
So,
We're on the same page.
yeah. So let me ask you, as a composer,
Hmm.
what's your creative process? I know it probably varies. Everybody's does, but what where do you typically start? What happens?
Uh, anything inspires me, and anything can inspire me.
Hmm.
So it can be it can be a conversation I heard, or a conversation I'm thinking of, or something that I read somewhere, or
Right.
so that's sort of, if you will, the seed of the process. But it's if it comes down to like the musical part of it, then I tend to um either, probably I might be playing something on the trumpet, or I might be playing something on the piano, and it's usually a little device or so where I think, oh, this is cute, and
Right.
maybe it's worth exploring, and then I
Yes.
kind of go from there. That's one side of my brain. The other side of my brain tends to, I also love writing for people. So what I mean with that is writing with certain musicians in mind, because
Yes.
that's a different way of
Yeah.
composing.
Absolutely.
It's very challenging, but I love that. Because I love, again, listening to how musicians play, and when you when you really get into that, then you tend to be able to come up with lines or things that would probably fit that person. So I like the idea of putting, and that's the reason why I recorded this record with this
Right.
group of
Because
musicians.
you had that in mind while you were writing.
Exactly. I thought this is a Russell thing. This is probably Will Kennedy would be great for this, and
Oh.
Jimmy would be, and
Yeah.
on and on and on, and so that's usually my process. I don't overthink when I write. That's something I can definitely say. I don't
Yes.
overthink, because I've composed so much stuff and written so many songs now, to a point where you kind of know when something will work or when it
Yeah.
won't work, or when if it's worth pursuing or not. So I don't overthink it. I don't overthink it. I don't
Well,
yeah.
yeah.
The
Uh,
songs for this record, for instance, I wrote them in pretty much no time. It was a really quick process.
Now, do you write them out? Do you demo them in a DAW? What's your process there?
Yeah, this is where technology helps us. Of course, I mean, I demo my ideas in a DAW. Depending on what the situation is, I sometimes deliberately decide not to sketch them out too
Two,
specific,
yes,
to kind of leave the room for imagination of the
ex-
musicians that I'm going to bring in, because that's where the magic happens. When I sort of you put something on the table and you almost kind of like relinquish it to you know what I mean?
yeah,
And then the keyboard player or the drummer goes, he goes left or he goes right, and you think, oh, I didn't see that coming. That's great,
right, yeah. Because if
you know.
if you do too much, that that doesn't leave much room for the musicians to have
No,
their.
no,
It's like as a producer, when I would solicit songs for an artist,
right.
the favorite things I got were just piano and vocal or guitar and
There you go.
vocal.
There you go.
Because if you've produced a song out, then where am I going to go with it?
Exactly, 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 exactly. So I like that little bit of room. Um, but it's a great process. Composing is an I just love the idea of composition and improvisation are kind of like the same, in a way the same to me, which is one
Absolutely.
minute you have nothing and the next minute you have a song or a composition or an
Yes.
idea. You literally start with thin air. You have nothing,
Right.
absolutely nothing.
Because
And
improvisation is really nothing more than spontaneous composition.
it's
And
composition.
I
It's
I
composition.
I
Composition.
used to see Return to Forever back in the
Right.
early days. And there, I
Right.
remember when I was in college, they came and performed at our college. And when Stanley had a bass solo, he just started doing this thing. Well, 2 years later, I heard it again. It was his song Lopsy Lou. That's where it stemmed from his solos. And,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
that's,
It has evolved into, yeah.
yes. You
Yeah.
hit on something that you like, and you're like, I'm going to remember that when I go home tonight. And
That's right. That's
yeah,
right. And you go from there. And you go from there. And you go from there.
yeah.
You know.
So
Uh,
now you've been a musical director for
yes.
years, and people don't under. I don't know if people really fully understand the responsibility of being a musical director for someone. Uh,
Right. Right.
tell us a little bit, because I know, God,
Well,
yeah, just tell
as
us a
a
little bit about who you've worked with and your experience as a director.
yeah, being a musical director is a completely different thing from being we would call it a side man or a session
Yes,
musician or just one of the guys or girls in the band.
right.
Um, you as a musical director, if you're working for an artist or if the artist is three people or a group or whatever, but if
Hmm.
you're the musical director, you are in charge of the band, obviously. That's the bit that sounds interesting. But the bit that is not so romantic is is that you are also the first people to get shot when things go wrong, right?
Absolutely.
It's the artist coming straight to you after the show in the dressing room or
What
having
were
called
you
to their dressing
thinking?
room to hit you or so,
Yeah,
or at least to tell you what's up. What
I
happened with the tempo tonight? The song was in the wrong key, or whatever,
yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
And then you have to translate depending on how harmonically developed this artist is. You kind of have to translate their wishes
Yes, into
to
realities.
music and into
Yeah,
reality, into
musical
into
realities.
exactly. And sometimes these wishes are completely unrealistic. Sometimes they're great, and
But
sometimes
to
they're in
them, they're
between.
not unrealistic.
No, they never are. And the
And
funny
that's
thing is,
it's a
they
balancing act.
exactly, and they expect you to just make it happen. They
Yeah.
don't care. The artist doesn't care how you make it happen. You know, they don't care if you need to rewrite the entire arrangement for the band and you need to do three extra, whatever. It's just make it happen. You know, and that's sort of that's a hat that I've been wearing for a really big chunk of my musical career, and it kind of it's amazing on the one hand, and on the other hand, it kind of takes you away from playing because that's the downside of it. Because you're so busy with making sure that everybody is doing what they need to do.
Right.
And then there is another thing about musical directorship, which is quite interesting. There is just sort of the actual physical sort of the playing the music, making sure that the band sounds great, blah blah blah, and all that. And then you have the psychological aspect of it, making sure that everybody feels relaxed, okay, feels well rehearsed, making
Yes.
sure that the artist is happy at all times.
It's
Checking in with
almost
the artist.
it's almost like being a producer in a live situation.
That's correct.
You're the
That's correct.
liaison between the band and the artist.
That's correct.
Sometimes the artist, like you said, doesn't really know how to interpret what it is that they want, but
Right.
that's your job.
That's your job. That's your
Like
job. Yeah.
I'm musical director for the Three Degrees when they go
Right.
when they go to Japan. Now,
Right.
being musical director for three women
Oh,
is an entirely
tell me
different
about it.
thing because none of them agree on what should have happened, and
Mm,
so then you have to find that compromise, and
correct.
you know you have to be such a mediator. Now,
Yeah.
some artists are like we were talking earlier about when I was working with Curtis Mayfield.
Right. Right.
He
Right.
was a
Right. Right.
joy to work with. You know,
Right.
if he
Right.
didn't like
Right.
something, he would just, you know, he wouldn't even just tell me. He would just go, y'all, I don't care for that. Don't do that. You know,
Right.
um,
Right. Right.
he,
Right.
you
Right.
know, but
Right.
still, he expected me to be the guy that would
To
put,
be the guy that makes it happen
yes,
somehow. You know?
yeah,
Yeah.
he can
I.
put it out there for everybody, but I'm the
Yeah.
one responsible.
Exactly, and I've had the same thing with I've been a long stint with Sister Sledge.
Yes,
I mean, you know, the big hits and all of that, but all around the world, it was absolutely lovely. It's wonderful experience as well. But you know, it comes with responsibilities. It comes with major
major
responsibilities.
responsibilities.
If things weren't maybe the way they felt it should have been that particular night, they would let me know.
Yeah, in no
They would let me
uncertain
know.
terms.
Yeah, they would let me know, and so that creates a lot of pressure, and it's a really interesting. You're sort of like a weird middleman, and sometimes you're also a babysitter or so,
Yes, and psychologist and
psychologist, because you
mother,
know something
father.
might kick exactly, and something might kick off in band, and then you kind of have to make sure that that sort of is being kept away from the artist, because you know,
Yeah,
or the opposite, or so. But I love it. I love it. It's a
yeah,
different way of making music.
yeah. And when you're on stage and you're playing, you can't play like you're a sideman. You have to listen very intently to everyone,
Correct.
and also
Correct.
make mental notes of.
Correct.
And you know
Correct.
the guy back there playing drums or whatever, he's just doing his thing, having a good
He's
time.
doing.
But and he's listening, and you know, hopefully, but he's not hearing it the same way you're having to hear it.
No, no, no. It's almost like you have to, as a musical director, you have to hear the music in band dimension and in the third sort of the overall bigger picture dimension
Yeah.
every single night. You have to listen to obviously what you play, what everyone else contributes, but you kind of have to listen and watch the entire show and make
Yes.
mental notes, you
Yeah.
know,
Like
while you're playing.
I always joke with the Three Degrees. I mean, I've watched them so many times.
Mm,
I know their moves. I know what they're going to
mm,
do on what
mm,
songs, and
mm.
um, you know, while everybody else is just, but you know, if you ask them, hey, what's the dance step on, you know, when will I see you again? They'll just be
Yeah,
like, I don't know, man, I'm playing my stuff.
right,
But you
right,
have to be
right.
aware of everything.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Absolutely.
So you've got another project going on right now with a couple of members from Jamiroquai, correct?
That's correct. That's correct. Rob Harris, the guitar player, and Paul Turner, the bass player,
Mm-hmm.
they're just stellar musicians in their own right, and they are part of what is it, Jamiroquai.
Right.
We have a sort of like a trio, and we sort of invite musicians to come in and play with us. And we release material, and it's called Trionic. So for those of you out there interested
Yeah.
in stuff, it's Trionic official on Instagram, and Trionic everywhere on the web and
Okay,
stuff.
great.
And there's a lot of material out there. Um, it's based on the same concept of, the three of us started writing together,
Mm-hmm.
and we said, okay, all three of us, we know how to do it in the studio. We've been doing it for a while and all that, but shall we just keep this thing live? So one of our main goals and mottos is, we go into the studio and everything that we record is live. The live takes. We just set up, play things live,
Yeah.
twice, three times, choose the best take. If there's a mistake, we just leave it. If it's a serious mistake, well, we probably have to
Punch
redo it.
in or something.
Yeah. So it's based on that same concept of musicianship first,
Yes.
and production later.
Right. So when you're, wait, how do you do when you're writing with others? Because sometimes that can be challenging. Um, Sometimes it's great,
True.
and sometimes it can be difficult because depending you again it gets back to that whole thing about surrender. you know,
Yeah.
and that's not a negative connotation. It's not like you're waving the white flag. Okay, we'll go
No.
with it. I mean, surrendering to the idea and to the music,
Right.
and then trying to pull it together
Right.
as
Right.
the trio and or however
Right.
however you're writing.
It's with Trionic. It's Trionic is most definitely a, if you will, a leaderless concept, really, where there's
Hmm.
no like leader between us. We just throw ideas on the table, and we trust each other to be, everyone is really respectful with each other's ideas,
Mm-hmm.
and but we're honest enough to sort of say, well, if an idea doesn't work, we fritch it,
Yeah.
we just leave it for the next time, or shelve it,
Yeah.
or use it for something else, or just
It's
completely try
yeah.
something different.
It's not time for it yet.
Exactly. But to write and to think in that manner, it requires a certain maturity as well, sort of not go into a writing session and feel that it should be your record. It's a collective thing, which
Yes.
means leave your ego at the door. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, but
And
it's really easy.
sometimes that's easier said than done too. Because as a musician, I feel anybody that gets on stage in front of
Mm,
people, it,
mm.
ego gets a bad rap. It's because we always, every time we talk about ego, it's bad.
It's
But,
usually bad.
but ego, we have to have it. You
Otherwise, we wouldn't be on stage.
Right, exactly. As George Carlin said, if you don't have ego, if you're up on stage, you're all about, hey, dig me,
Yeah.
and
Exactly.
and
Exactly.
that's
Right.
what you're doing. But
Right.
it doesn't have to be a negative thing, and it
No.
balance. There's balance in everything in life.
Right.
So,
Right. Right.
uh,
Right. Right.
you also. You've composed for theater shows and things like that as well, and
That's true.
um, you have a thing with art installations. Tell me about that because that sound the I'm assuming it's the immersive thing. Like I went to this immersive Van Gogh,
Right.
and
Right. Yeah.
that was pretty awesome.
Yeah. Look, what has happened is that obviously, as we all know, is that technology is in a completely different place from even if it's say 6 years ago or
Yeah.
10 years ago, and it has enabled us to do things we couldn't even think of or dream of. Now, immersive art is is definitely something that is, I would say, is kind of emerging at this point, because I'm
Yes.
thinking that in 10 years time it will be in a completely different place. And the idea that, all these drawings and paintings can be brought to life,
Yes.
literally to life, um, is a completely new thing. Now, what has happened is that a particular company, in exhibitions, they do exhibitions and all kinds of big projects.
Mm-hmm.
They've approached me and asked if I'd be interested in being the musical director for an art installation
Wow.
project. And I think I can say what it is this now. It's from the painter Gustav Klimt.
Mm-hmm.
And um, and for this one I have to travel to Spain, to
Oh, that's too bad.
in fact tomorrow I'm on a flight
Oh,
to Spain for the what they call the montage period. So I've composed all of the music. Most of the music is compositions, and then everything will be synced and put together with the images and all of that. And then the
yeah.
first opening night is somewhere early March or something.
So
So
it's kind of like like film scoring. You've
it's
done
film
all
score.
the
Yeah,
you've done all the cues. Now you have to
yeah,
get with the director and
yep,
fine
yep.
tune everything.
Correct, correct,
Yeah.
correct. So everything's kind of ready, all the cues are ready, and everything's written. Now you take the whole batch, and then you sort of go into the real world with it and
Yeah.
make it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
So
exciting because
it's exciting.
when I went to the Van Gogh, I didn't know what to expect,
Ah, right,
and
right.
it it was pretty mind blowing, you know.
It's yeah,
And
yeah,
and
yeah.
he was never, I mean, Van Gogh was, master, but
Mm,
it was not always necessarily my cup of tea. But
right.
to just be there, and at the end you'd get a virtual
That's true. Yeah, a
trip
virtual experience.
through his painting.
Uh-huh.
It
Uh-huh.
started in his little one, his bedroom, and
Right,
you go out the door, and then next thing you know, you're in
right,
all his different paintings, and it was
right.
just, and you ended up obviously with Starry Night.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
it was just so cool, and
yeah.
I,
It's
I think
amazing.
that's great that you're getting to do that.
Yes, because it's a whole new avenue. I mean, when I got the call, it's pretty much if you would call it a cold call, and I thought for a minute, I thought, is what I want to do that? But next second I thought, yeah, sure, it's
Huh.
something I've never done before. Not for immersive art, I've done music for the film and that kind of stuff, but the principle is the same. Why not?
Yeah,
It's just a different avenue, and it involves composing. You have to be very creative, of course, and I have kind of carte blanche to write the music, and so far they seem very happy, so all good.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, anytime you get to be creative and have other people accept it and and get paid for it as well. That
Yeah, exactly, exactly, exactly.
that's a blessing that most people can't even imagine. You,
Exactly,
how
exactly.
many people do you run into that they hate their job. They don't like, it's like, yeah, I got to go to work today. As a
Yeah.
musician, we always say, well, got to go play. So even the language of what we do,
Yeah.
we don't. It's work, but we don't go to work. We go
No,
and we got to go
no.
play.
Yeah.
And
It's almost like something that has sort of gone into our psychic, where musicians for generations never have taken their own work serious enough. And I'm putting it a bit sharp, but that's I don't mean it that sour, but do you know what I mean? Because for us to say, well, yeah, I'm playing tonight, yeah, we're playing, no, you're working. It's
no,
work.
no, you listening is going to be work. I'm playing.
it's, it's not play, man, it's work.
Yeah,
So
it yeah
yeah.
it it can be work, especially like when we were talking about musical director.
Huh.
There's a whole work play ethic
Yeah,
going on in that
yeah, yeah,
situation.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Now you also teach,
Yes.
and
That that has a bit of a tail. I mean, there's a reason why I teach, and that's because I was I was very fortunate to come from an extremely musical family, with musicians, a lot of musicians in the family, and that's great. But um, my especially my father, actually, my dad, who's not longer with us, he one of the things he was really into education, into teaching, because he was a professional musician as well, military, and but he always believed strongly. I mean, it was almost religiously. He believed in the art and that whole thing of passing on your knowledge.
absolutely,
You know, because and that has been instilled into me from when I was a kid, basically.
yeah.
And so to me, it's an automatic thing to want to pass on. Now, so the main reason for me to teach is, I really think it's great when you're talented, and you know all this stuff, you have so much experience or whatever. But if you just keep it to yourself,
Yeah, what good is
what's
it?
the point then? What's the
Yeah,
point? I mean,
I
pass it
I
on.
I love. When I first started teaching, people were like, "Oh, you're going to hate it because some people aren't going to practice," and then
Right.
it's just the opposite. I find that if you can motivate and inspire, you open up doors that they don't have to become professional musicians. It's just another way for them to enjoy
Yeah.
things,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
it's a great way to express yourself,
Yeah.
and it keeps you up on things because, like, I'm not sure who said it originally, but the guitarist Pat Martino told me a long
Mm,
time ago. He
mm,
goes, "Learn everything you can about music and then forget it."
forget it.
Well, I was like 22 years old, 23, so I didn't really know what he was talking about.
Right. 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 Right.
And and then eventually it kind of dawned on me. It's like you learn all this stuff, but you transcend all that knowledge, and it just
Yes.
becomes part of you.
Right.
So a lot of times when I'm teaching, a student will go, "Well, why did you do that?"
Right.
Um, I don't know. And then I might have to look it up to go, "Oh yeah, that's right. It was called this." And because, I just forgot it. I just knew
Yeah.
how to do it.
That's true. That's true. I teach on university level. Doing
Hmm.
lectures and all of that in different things in songwriting and in production, and I tend to think, well, um, if all these students that I've been teaching, if two or three students, take what I have to say and what I have to pass on seriously, and they take something that they really have a
Yes.
few takeaways, and build on those and build their own career based on those takeaways, then
Hmm.
I'm cool. I'm happy. That
Yeah.
that's what you're doing it for.
Yeah.
To just pass on what you know, and um, as I'm teaching different things, you're passing on different things. So you're passing on things about musical directorship. You're passing on things about leadership. You're passing things about harmony. Obviously, you're passing things about the production. So there's so many things you're passing on,
Yes.
and all you can hope is that a few students just kind of grab bits and pieces of that information and
Yeah.
run with it, and they pass it on, hopefully, as well.
One of my favorite things is when you finish a gig, most musicians need to wind down somewhere or
Mm,
somehow. So
mm,
you typically there's always, like, there's every city or whatever has one spot where musicians will congregate at late night.
right.
And aside from some of the stories that get told, when musicians start talking music, there, it's just like there's this passionate energy that comes from the
Right.
table, because everybody's like, oh yeah, yeah, and if you do this, and
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
shop talk, but
It is.
still it's great shop talk.
It's the most amazing thing, especially when you have when you talk to musicians who really get it as well,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Then that conversation can then go on for hours. You
I
know what I
I
mean?
love talking to somebody that knows way more than I do.
Right, right, right,
You
right,
know.
right, right, right. And I also love the the musicians' wisdoms that are being passed on,
Yes.
and that stories from the road.
Yeah. Oh, God.
Some
People don't even
most
believe some of them.
exactly. Some of these stories, some of these stories are so surreal when you think about,
Yeah.
when a drummer talks about, oh, we was on tour and then we missed our flight and then we had to sleep at the airport and blah, 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 blah. If you write it down, you're like, this can't be a real story, but this
Hmm.
is what really happens in actual music
Yes.
land, right? The more
Yeah.
bizarre things, the more
Everybody can.
bizarre things.
Everybody can exchange stories.
Oh
It's
my goodness, yeah, and I've had my obviously my fair share
yeah.
of
I'm
touring
sure.
stories, good, bad, and ugly, and all of them, and everything
Yeah.
in between. Yeah, yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Well, you've had an amazing career so far, and
Oh, thank you very, very much.
and
Thank you very
I'm so glad I got your record, because um, the writing is great, the
Oh,
musicianship, as we talked about, everything just comes together on it.
yeah.
So I'd like to, at the end of this interview, go ahead and play something from the album. Do you have a particular favorite that you request?
No, not really. I kind of, I really love all the, I love what we've done, and you could play the title track, Caribbean Tales, or
Oh,
you could play whatever. You can play Fifth Avenue. It's up to you. Yeah.
okay. Well, you know, I'll figure that out when the time comes, because like I say, it is hard to pick one, because they all there's a cohesiveness with everything, but there's
Thank you.
also what's the word I'm looking for? There's variations on everything.
Yeah, and
Uh,
that's because I've tried to strike a balance between um between Caribbean music, which I
right.
guess you can hear, some of the rhythms and the
The
melodies and stuff.
yes, I heard the rhythms on one thing. I was like, I was when it first started, and I can't remember the title. It might have been the title cut, but I was sitting there going, "All right, where's one?" And then the piano came in, and I was like, "Ah."
We're home.
Now I know what I was listening to.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And so
So
I've tried to strike a balance, and I love that because of my background, and having grown up with, oh, so many types of music, at
yeah,
all at the same time as in my childhood. So I am always looking for a balance between, different music styles, because that's just the world we're living in, and that's just the way I like to write in general. And in this case, it was sort of Caribbean flavored music and melodies, but then mixed with obviously funk and jazz
yeah,
and the
yeah.
sort of the
You
middle of
had
the
a lot
road
of different
thing.
elements, and
Yeah,
they
yeah,
weren't, and it wasn't like, well, I'm going to make this be this. None of it was
no,
forced. It's all very natural sounding, and that's also part of the liveness of how you recorded.
mhm, mhm, mhm.
Again, it's that live energy that happens, where anything can happen, but if it does, we're going to go with it.
Exactly, exactly. And you hear musicians talk about this thing of how important that spontaneous element of playing is. it's really really hard to describe, but it's those spontaneous things, and I'm sure you totally get that. Is that spontaneous note, or maybe even a mistake that's being played during
Yeah.
the take, or that little bass thing that went up, or or whatever it might be,
Fat finger on the
or or
piano.
oh man, it could be anything. It's that little spontaneous element that could completely turn around the entire ship, or take the whole flight to a
Yes.
whole new place.
Yes. Absolutely. And
It's magic. It's
and
magic.
and
I'm still,
I really wish people would get back to that because,
yeah,
as we were talking earlier, there's so much solitary music being done now. And
yeah,
I have this thing, and I probably get in trouble for saying this, but we've gotten to the point where where mediocre is the norm.
hmm,
And I'm not trying to diss anyone, but it's
hmm,
like, you've got a keyboard guitar part. Bring a guitar player in because he's going to interpret that entirely
yeah,
differently,
yeah,
and it will
true,
inspire you.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
we all have great ideas and this and that, but they're nothing until you bring them out into the world to let others contribute to it. It's still
yeah.
your idea. You sparked all the energy.
Totally agree. Totally agree. And that it has to do with the fact that we've migrated to a place, I guess, as a community, as a world community, especially in the Western world, where you know everything is about shortcuts.
Hmm.
You know,
The
so
quick fix.
why would you bring a guitar player in if I can just play it here on the keyboard, right?
Right.
And on and on and on and on. And so shortcuts. So people tend to want that result ASAP,
Yes.
and right. So and that then stops a lot of people from do some research, or try it again, or try differently, or bring in that guitar player, as you
Yeah.
said, or bring a real drummer in, and see where it takes you,
Oh,
and that
it'll take you to another world.
that will take you to into another world, because when you've had, even if it's a drum loop, you've programmed it and you've played that
Right.
demo, that's great. Bring in a real drummer, the whole
Whole
thing
thing.
goes somewhere else,
Yep.
right?
Next level.
Exactly,
And that
exactly.
will inspire you again to approach, well, maybe I should do, oh, he's doing, that is so cool. I'm going to play this now. And
Exactly.
and
Exactly.
that's where, even when you're doing it, now with technology, we do so many things remotely. There, but I could do a piece, send you the track, you do
Right.
your thing on it. I'm gonna, mind blown. Okay,
Right. Right. Right.
I need to do this now,
Right.
and it's a different type of. I don't
Yeah.
even want to use the word live collaboration, but it is a
Yeah.
different. We're having to learn how to do things in a different fashion that we
Yeah.
did naturally before, but now
Right.
we have all this technology which allows me to talk to you in the UK,
Which is
and
great.
we could collaborate just like that.
Right.
You
Right.
know.
Right. That's true. That's true. It's interesting you saying that, because it really makes me think of, because we're talking about in the moment kind of thing, and how
Hmm.
that can trigger something in your heart, right?
Yes.
Immediately. I I'm playing with this drummer Paco Seri, for those of you who might not know him, he's an incredible drummer, and he's been the drummer for the Sawino Will Syndicate for a long time, and
Hmm.
he's just one of those sort of incredible drummers. And
Right.
but the point is, he's one of those totally in the moment people. So he sits there behind John, plays the groove, and there's somebody soloing. And as soon as something really cool happens, you can bet he goes, ah, he just really
Yeah,
had it
I
going.
love when
But
that happens.
because that moment has then apparently triggered something
Hmm.
right there. But you know what I mean? And that's magic. That's
Yeah.
magic. That's magic.
Well,
Love that.
yeah, Ivan, I really love your passion about music.
Oh,
Um,
thank you.
that you
Thank you.
know,
Same here.
it comes through
Oh,
in talking with you and having just met you. So, um,
thank you. Thank
yeah,
you.
yeah,
Man,
my
I hope we
pleasure.
get to play, one day. You never
Yeah,
know.
we need to have a Blue Canoe All Star uh, tour,
Exactly.
and
Exactly.
and
Look
and
at
I
all
will
stuff.
and I will mention your album is on Blue Canoe Records, available at on Blue Canoe Records site or anywhere where you get your music nowadays.
Hmm. Hmm.
I recommend that if you love good live uh,
Hmm.
playing and just
Hmm.
good songs, things that you can move to. You'll hear things that you haven't heard before,
Hmm.
and you'll you know just go out and get the record. Don't
Yeah.
bother playing cuts on Spotify. Just download the record and be done
Exactly.
with it because you're going to be happy that it's in your collection.
Oh, wow. Thank you for the kind words.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time out to do this. I know we have a couple of different time zones here, and you've
We
got a
do.
you've got a flight to catch
I do. I
in the
do.
morning. So
Yeah.
um, we'll pause it here, and maybe we can do this again at some point.
That would be absolutely lovely. It would be lovely to come back into your program. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, and we'll
Thank you.
close out with your title cut.
Thank you. Thank
All
you.
right, take care.
Take care now. Bye bye.